Here we are today with writer, producer and director Vaughan Sivell, who has been working on Third Star, The Canal, The Balcony, Mr. Calzaghe, Prevenge and the up-and-coming Oscar Pistorius movie. Basically, mate, we're from the same area. We're from Pembrokeshire. How mad is that?
West is best.
That's awesome. Come on, give me five. Give me five. Right, so basically, you know, we both come from the little sort of places. You come from Tenby, I come from Haverfordwest. What was the crack? You basically, you were in Tenby one day and you thought, I'm going to London. How did this start with you becoming a filmmaker?
Well, I told my mum and dad when I was 10 years old that I was going to be a filmmaker and run a studio and stuff. And I don't know, they just obviously nodded and yeah, cool, whatever.
You're like, yeah.
And I got to about 13 and I was still hadn't changed my plans of doing that, but of course I had not a clue how to do that. But I was writing, I was designing the gates of the studio and I was writing synopses for films and stuff.
At that age?
Yeah, I just, and then at that age there was a sort of teacher strikes on. I was a kid of the 80s and early 90s and there wasn't much drama in school, and so my mother saw an advert in the paper for an agency in Llanelli and she said, do you want to go and do that? And I was busy. I played football for Pembrokeshire and Tenby and played rugby, and I was like, oh no, anything that interrupts my sporting life at the moment is going to be a pain. So she said, oh, I think they pay. And I said, that's different.
Now we're talking, show me the money.
So I went along to this thing and it wasn't me at all, and they were actually looking for sort of child models for Swansea C&A, and so I was like, no, because I didn't even like putting myself forward for things in school really. Yeah. So, but by coincidence, the lady who ran that agency said, you know what, he's not like the other kids here. He doesn't even have a very strong accent, because when you're from Tenby, you don't have a strong Welsh accent.
It's the same with Pembrokeshire.
Exactly, yeah. And so she said, why don't you go to meet this agent? So a week later, I'm going up with my mother to London to meet this agent, and she said, oh, he's great. Why don't you go to this audition? There's an audition the same day. Yeah. And so I went for this Disney movie, and I got it. And it was a Disney movie with Hayley Mills. Called Back Home, I think it was called. And so a week later, literally in a sort of head spin and sort of a bit pissed off I was going to miss a game of rugby for the school or whatever, I was on a film set, and it was quite a big film set, and of course having decided at 10 that this is what I was going to do, and finding that there I was with the lighting trucks and the endless food all day, which was the most
I love some of that.
I was like, this is it. So there was never any chance of me doing anything else, and to this day I then moved agents and blah blah, and I went and did a classical training in theatre and started writing.
So what theatre did you go to then? I
went to a college that was linked to the RSC at the time. So I went and did Shakespeare and that's classic just for 2 years, and I already had an agent, so I came down to London and started acting. And I was very lucky in that in that time I was getting paid to act, but I was getting paid well on TV. Yeah. But I didn't like it, and so I think my most successful year I worked something like 52 days. But I earned the year's salary, and so it meant that the rest of the time I could either sit around doing nothing, and instead of that I went and worked for free on film sets, and I learned and put videos and stuff like that, and started writing. So I'd written a bad novel, and basically I was very lucky compared to other actors in that being an average actor paid for me to be a bad writer for years while I did my trade sort of thing. And then got through the slush piles, didn't know anyone in the industry really, got through the slush piles, and my scripts got bought, and before I knew it I was earning money as a writer, and I gave up acting. And then there came a point where I was obviously, I'd been 20, by the time I was 21 I was sitting on sets as an actor thinking, God, his first's not very good and this cameraman needs to work faster and this is the thing. And I was bright enough to know that nobody wants to hear that from a 21-year-old actor.
No.
So I'd sit there sort of grinding my teeth thinking, when's my time going to be to do this? And of course you realise that no one's going to give you that time. You make that time. And so once I was earning money as a writer, me and a mate set up Western Edge Pictures, and I was the cheapest writer I could find. And they wrote a script and we made it a couple of years later, and that's how we sort of started the company and went from there.
That's fantastic. And sort of, you talked about you weren't very happy when you were doing some of the stuff. How important do you think it is to be... I mean, a lot of people just take jobs because... for money, but you were never...
Yeah, I mean, I certainly took most of the jobs for money.
Yeah.
And I mean, look, the one thing I say is when I meet actors or writers or producers and they're complaining about it, try working down a coal mine. You know, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not that. I mean, I was unhappy, but I was just frustrated. You know, it was like it was nothing bad, and I had some of the best times of my life as an actor. It was hilarious, and you get treated. You know, it was the being in cotton wool was the bit I didn't like, really, is that you're last to know everything. So I'm just I like to organise. I like to know where everything is, and being put in a car and taken somewhere and dropped back home at night isn't my style.
Because some actors, I remember Christian Bale, he said, I just love my job, I'm just riding around on a horse and stuff like that. Do you know he's from Haverfordwest?
Yeah, I didn't
Yeah, so how awesome was that?
Yeah.
And then there's other actors that will remain nameless that will just say, I just work hard.
I mean, it is hard work, there's no doubt about that. We did a film called Third Star where we were on the Pembrokeshire cliffs for 5 weeks. You know, nothing. It was physically very hard work. I mean, the film was going to be called Barafundle Bay at one point because it was set in Barafundle Bay, and there's no way to get 40 crew and all the kit down to the beach without going down those steps. You know, that's what it is, and I love that. I love the physical side of it. But those actors, they really led that crew because of how hard they were, because they were in every scene all day. You know, Benedict Cumberbatch was in every shot all day, and there's no getting around it. It's hard work, but you know, some of the stuff I was doing wasn't the highest quality of just TV.
But you were just getting into it, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I learned an awful lot. You learn so much from the bad stuff and the mistakes other people make and your own mistakes.
And that was a good point that you said earlier. So you've seen other people like doing work, and you thought, you know, I think I can do a better sort of job.
Yeah.
Because I've seen people like that with some of the stuff I do, and I thought, God, you've actually inspired me. I think I can.
I don't know. I think there's. I very much. I think perhaps because I want to do it from being 10 years old, and I always say to people who want to go into doing what I do that it's the closest thing to running away with a circus.
Yeah.
Being filmed, and I think the weird thing about that phrase is that the very young, lovely crew that we have here are too young, probably.
They're a good-looking, cute crew, aren't they, mate? They're a good-looking crew.
They're too young to sort of know what that means, really, because circuses have become such a bad, horrible thing,
just
really. But
with nasty clowns that scare people.
Actually, you know, in the literary sense, circuses represented freedom and
back in the day, mate,
togetherness and like you turn up on a film set in a field in the middle of nowhere, there's nothing there, and before you know it, your wagons have circled, and there's a loo, and there's a kitchen, and there's a place to hang out, and there's a dining room, and everyone on the film set you often find are from completely different backgrounds and works of life, every different class, every colour, every creed, but they weirdly, for all the different skills they have, they are called upon to be brilliant and fast and efficient at some point in every day.
Yeah. Because
they're all working to do one thing, and there's not many industries that provide that. And out of that, you get this accelerated friendships and or lack of. And so it's the job of the producer to make everyone feel that they're part of that team and understand their team and enjoy it, because it definitely ends up going on camera.
Yeah. How difficult is it to come from like a little place like Pembrokeshire and to sort of go into sort of London and sort of build a name for yourself? Because there must have been, was there any doubters that said, this guy's crazy, he thinks he's the next Steel
I think
Bale?
it's in yourself, really. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, you've got to remember, there was no satellite phones. Going to meetings from where I lived involved, like, for me, because I'm
so old,
exactly,
mate, aren't we?
you know, it involved an A to Z with like, oh shit,
Yeah.
page 100 has fallen out, so I can't go to this meeting
Yeah.
because I don't know where I am and there's no one I can call. It's ridiculous. So I think it would be different now, but the doubts are in yourself, really. In that, you know, I was just terrified of London. I was absolutely terrified for years. but now it seems silly, and you know.
So basically, you face your fears.
Yeah, you have to. I mean, and also, I think if you're very good, you have to be good and lucky, is what I think. That's what it comes down to. It doesn't. You won't succeed in isolation with either one, and it totally helps to have parents in the industry, which I didn't have.
Yeah.
But I don't really have a problem with nepotism in that way at all. In that, if they're not talented, they won't make it. Now, if both your parents are lawyers and you become a lawyer, no one goes, "Oh, it's all right for him." But it's kind of likely you'll end up a lawyer and a good one, because you've grown up hearing people talk about the law and hearing people, you know, working in that way, and so why not? I have no problem with that. I didn't have it, and so I had to sort of learn a lot fast. But again, I say, it's if you've got talent, no one judges you in this industry. It's a great industry for being anything you want. And in a way, the hardest thing to be, probably once I've been doing, as I was hitting 30, is being what was perceived as a middle-class white man was difficult to do if you had no help, because of course there's no grants for that. All the grants are for other people, you know, other types who thoroughly deserve it. But
how did you fund it then?
How did I fund it?
Yeah.
Well, the first film, I went to Film Cymru Wales, which were fantastic, and they have supported me sort of right through in sort of as much as they can. But then it was learning on the job, because the first feature I did was a big budget for a first feature for somebody like me. It was, you know, we'd spent nearly £1 million, and learning how that is put together is what made me the producer I am today, because it's hard. It's tough. I now run a finance company as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was never in my...
Is there anything you don't do? You got your fingers
I've
in
never
a lot
done.
of pies,
I've never
mate.
done makeup, and I've never done catering. Although I've delivered my fair share of bacon sandwiches to sets. And
Oh, brilliant. What was your biggest challenge, and how did you overcome it?
I think I'm really dyslexic, and so when you're a kid, and you're sort of thinking, if I could play the guitar, that would be, if I could, you know, magic.
Yeah.
I'd be able to play a guitar because I could shag any girl then. I'd be, like, you know, that would be...
Men don't think like that, do they, mate? Look at Daniel. She's like, oh.
Nowadays, if I could...
To get famous, you'd be shagging everybody,
Well,
mate. You know what I mean? That's the thing, isn't it? Rich and famous, and it just opens up everything.
Off the shelf now, but no, if I could click my fingers now to have a gift, it would be to be able to read fast, because doing all the things I do, I cannot get through the amount
Get the information in your head.
I just can't read them quick enough. Can't read a script quick enough.
Because there's other examples of massive success, like Anthony Hopkins, dyslexic, Richard Branson, and it's just like...
When I was an actor, because one of the things with me, and every person who's... Dyslexia is such an outdated term in many ways, there's so many different types of it, but for me it was the not being able to read fast enough and not being confident reading. But like so many people who have some sort of thing that I feel silly saying it's a disability, because I'm fine, I'm absolutely fine. Having something else is stronger. So if I read a script, I could practically tell you it line by line. You know, I have a great memory for it, and a lot of actors who are dyslexic have echoed that, and so they're so sort of frightened of their reading, but they read very slowly but very thoroughly. But the other bit of their brain has kicked in to get them out of the embarrassment of not being able to do it. So I always had that. Like, I was always absolutely fine in auditions as an actor, because I could always muddle through anything, because even when I was pretending to read it, I wasn't reading it. I'd read it outside and I was memorising it. So, you know.
Who were your biggest inspirations?
I was very lucky in that my mum educated me in film history, so she would often sort of say, "Oh, it's a pity you have to go to school today because they're showing."
How many mums are like that?
My mum
is like,
school as
I'm
well.
42 and my mum is still saying get a normal job, Mark, and I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm gonna go and interview people.
No, I think it probably just all filmmakers. I watched very old films and new films, so I'm a kid of the 80s and 90s, so
Yeah.
Spielberg and George Lucas, and
It's awesome. Did you love growing up in the 80s? I loved
great.
it.
I mean,
it was awesome, wasn't it?
It is like the basis of most of what we do now.
Yeah. Well, where would you like to be as a filmmaker then in sort of 10, 20 years' time?
I would like to do everything that we do now. We are expanding all the time, and so there's a few projects that there's basically you can make a film for any amount of money. So like 200 million down to way less, and so there's some projects that should definitely be made for small amounts of money in a small, cozy way, and there's other films that need massive things, and I'd like to make some big budget movies.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm sure you'll get it then, mate. What's your highlights so far? Can I just say one before you even go? It's going to be one of them's going to be working with Calzaghe, isn't it?
Yeah, no.
It's got to be.
I think I was going to say, actually, more than shooting the Joe film, becoming Joe's mate.
Yeah.
It's been great.
Well, you were with him for, is it a couple of years?
Yeah.
So what, did he just phone you up? Oh, hi, I need...
No, it was a bit more... He basically had been getting offers to do films about him or the story of his life and stuff many times, and through one of my business partners, he had met his management. Talking about that, and so my business partner said, we don't want to do a Joe Calzaghe movie, do we? And I said, well, yeah, but what would the story actually be? Because I know he's from a sort of poor background, and then has obviously made a lot of money as a boxer, but that's true of every successful boxer, so what's the difference? And then what I loved about it is that you sort of think I was a big fan of Joe's, and I sort of thought I know, but I didn't know. I remember that day I was on holiday and I got the Wikipedia page up, and it said that Enzo had never been a boxer and had never boxed, and that was my first thing, and it was like Annie was with him all the way through. And so at that point I realised that though I didn't really have much experience in documentaries, I was going to approach it like a drama, and it was a father and son story, and at that point I thought I was making a western. Which was going to be based on the fact that Joe had cleaned up the dirty town, which was the divisions he was in.
You weren't going to put a cowboy hat on him, were you, mate?
Joe wouldn't have. Actually, Enzo would have.
Enzo, yeah.
But then I thought, we're making a heist movie, and it was about that if you'd have been asked to put money on whether that team, that Joe and Crazy Enzo, were going to do what they did and get out, quit at the top, you'd never have put money on it, and they did.
And the other thing as well that your film does as well, it goes into talking about he went for quite a long time with injuries, and to be at that level with injuries, it's insane.
This is the thing, from day one to the end, I'm no closer to understanding what it's like to be Joe in his superhuman abilities to lose the weight, not drink water while he was training because he'd put on too much weight, fight through the pain, and keep going, and just the never say die attitude is just beyond it. There's another whole other level.
Fantastic.
3 minutes left.
3 minutes left. I imagine you're a flipping busy man, mate. You're busy, and you just come back from South Africa, haven't you?
Yeah.
I imagine the movie industry is very competitive. So how hard is it to find support when you need to develop a project?
I made the decision to set up a finance company to do that, because otherwise you could easily fall through the cracks and find yourself as somebody who's possibly a good filmmaker with possibly great ideas, but the gaps between getting the meetings to get somebody to give you the money, and then you lose control of the project even if you're working on it, etc. So I decided that instead of making 5 movies after I made Third Star, I would spend the time setting up the finance company, and so I did that, and so now it's not difficult at all.
That's fantastic. And with and you're working on the Pistorius thing, because I want to know a little bit about that before we wrap up.
We had
Who
the
is
idea.
Oscar Pistorius?
We had the idea to do a film about Oscar Pistorius because we had a couple of links to people who'd written a lot about him, but I wasn't sure on the way into the story because I didn't want to do like an ambulance chasing story about him shooting his girlfriend alone, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because it's just a big tragedy from every point, really, whatever, however it happened and why it happened. But what I had the idea that through doing a little bit of research that within a few years of each other, Nelson Mandela has been released from prison and is running South Africa within a few years of Oscar being born. And of course, Mandela's South Africa was a brand new country born with severe problems of its past. And Oscar was a child born with severe problems. And if you jump forward through Oscar's life and the life of South Africa, you get to a moment in his trial where his defence team partly blame the state of South Africa, that if you're a rich white guy and you hear a bump in the middle of the night, you grab your gun and you start shooting. And so our film is about the life of Oscar Pistorius and the great hopes that he created and the great things he achieved for it all to come to this moment. Alongside a history of South Africa from Mandela's release onwards and what state South Africa is in today, because it's the most amazing country of extremes, and that's what we're finding as we shoot. So it's very much a film about those two lives intermingling, the life of South Africa and the life of that man.
And finally, what advice do you have to people that want to follow in your footsteps or be a success as you have become?
Well, there's no one way to do it, is the thing. There's no, I mean, my way, I couldn't, when people ask me what I did, I always say, well, I can tell you, but I don't think that's what you should necessarily try and do.
Yeah.
While that makes it difficult and sort of elliptical to sort of get your head round, the thing I would say is that the best thing about the industry is that there's a million ways to do it and a million ways in. And so just being brilliant.
Just to be brilliant.
Is what you have to do. Because whatever department you do, you can move and you can, so just keep trying, never give up, and you'll get there.
Fantastic. Vaughan Sivell, it has been an absolute honour and a pleasure, my fellow Welsh comrade. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
That's awesome.
Okay.